my life could only be defined as an absolute nightmare. I really wish I could have just stayed home that one Friday night, watching anime and thinking about how cute my boyfriend is. But instead, he and a few of my friends, along with their boyfriends, decided the best way to spend my evening was at a party. For context, I'm 17 years old, and I know this is a little cliche, but I was shy and didn't really interact with people all that much. I mean, I was so anxious to talk to people that I would start trembling on the phone, even when someone I was really close to was on the other end. I never called my boyfriend unless it was an emergency. That's how bad my anxiety was. But I could manage just fine with a few friends I made during my childhood, and the fact that he, my boyfriend, was a lovely guy who never once tried to take advantage of me in any way. He didn't even push for the usual things people do in relationships. I think we had our first kiss after 7 months of dating. Unfortunately, on this particular day, they decided I needed to grow up a little. I had to leave the safety of my house and go with them to a party. As you can tell, I was not keen to follow along with their plan. "I don't want to go," I said, practically slapping my friend Jennifer on the arm when she tried dragging me toward the massive building where this illegal party was being held. "Quit your whining. Don't you know Drake is here?" Drake being my boyfriend. Hearing that he was inside was enough to make me think of all the fun things I could do with him. We could dance, drink some booze, and just enjoy ourselves. It's not that I didn't want to do these extroverted things. It's just I didn't like doing them when there were dozens of eyeballs staring in my direction. At least, that's how I perceived it. But what if I slip? Or worse, what if I spill a drink on one of the popular girls? I don't think I could go back to school after that. Jennifer rubbed her eyelids and pinched her forehead in frustration. "Bonnie, shut up for 1 second. We let you have your time throughout your teenage years, but we're about to turn into adults. How are you going to get a job?" "I don't want to get a job. I'll just become a stay-at-home mom or wife. I don't think I'd make a good mom anyway. And with that amount of self-confidence, I doubt you'll make a good wife either. I'm trying to help you come out of your shell. You keep putting yourself down." I looked at the massive building. I wasn't really sure what kind of building it was, whether it was an old factory or some sort of textile plant. All I could tell was that the architecture was inspired by brutalism, with large glass windows that were cracked or completely shattered. The party was loud. I could feel the bass of the stereos vibrating through the ground just outside. It was amazing that nobody had called the cops on us yet. "Are you sure we're not going to get into any trouble?" I asked. Jennifer rolled her eyes and looked like she was about to just leave me out here, until I came to my senses. "Yes, you don't have to worry about it. This place is isolated. There's not even another house for 10 miles. I looked at the flashing blue, red, and purple lights coming through the glass windows and the hallways that led inside. A part of me did want to go inside and do something crazy. I had watched plenty of teen dramas and loved the idea of being this extravagant party girl, rubbing my body up against everyone as I let loose and became the wild child. Jennifer knew that about me. I guess that's why she was extra pushy today. Don't judge her. She's just not good at being gentle with this stuff. She does the same thing to her own boyfriend. Jennifer grabbed my hand and yanked me forward before I could protest again. Enough overthinking. Drake is waiting, and you'll hate yourself if you don't at least say hi. The inside of the building was just as chaotic as I feared, if not worse. The pounding music was deafening, beating through my chest like my own heartbeat was trying to escape. Lights flickered and strobed, casting the room in wild, almost disorientating colors. The space was packed with people, most of them strangers, though a few familiar faces popped up here and there. It was a sweaty, wild mess, and I immediately regretted being here. "Bonnie, breathe," Jennifer said, practically shouting over the music as she gave my arm a reassuring squeeze. "Find Drake, stick with him, and you'll be fine. You'll even have fun, I promise." I wasn't convinced, but I nodded anyway, looking through the crowd for him. He wasn't hard to spot. He had this natural, relaxed confidence about him that made him stand out, even in a sea of people. But the crowd was so dense that getting to him felt like an impossible task. Jennifer gave me a nudge. "Go find him. I'm going to check on Aaron. Don't just stand there like a deer in headlights." And with that, she was gone, swallowed up by the crowd before I could even respond. I hesitated, my feet glued to the floor. This was worse than I'd expected. People were bumping into me left and right, laughing, dancing, and shouting as if they didn't have a care in the world. I envied them. How could they be so comfortable, so uninhibited? My hands started to shake, and I clenched them into fists to try to stop it. I couldn't just stand here forever. I'd stick out even more if I did. I spotted a quieter corner near the wall and darted toward it, dodging people as best as I could. Once I was there, I pressed my back against the cold concrete and tried to steady my breathing. This was a mistake. I should have stayed home. What was I thinking? "Bonnie!" A familiar voice snapped me out of my spiraling thoughts. I looked up to see one of my childhood friends, Ellie, weaving her way through the crowd toward me. Her bright red hair was impossible to miss. "Ellie!" Relief flooded through me as she reached my side. Ellie wasn't much of a partier either, but she had this quiet confidence that made her seem at ease in any situation. She grinned at me, holding up a plastic cup filled with something bright and fizzy. "Jennifer told me to find you," she said, her voice barely audible over the music. "You okay?" I shrugged, which was about all the response I could muster. "You look like you're about to bolt," she said, giving me a sympathetic look. "But don't worry. Drake's here somewhere, right? Let's find him." The mention of Drake was enough to stir me into action. We started making our way through the crowd together. Having Ellie by my side made it a little easier, though I still felt like every eye in the room was on me. Of course, that wasn't true. No one was paying attention to me, but my mind refused to believe it. As we pushed deeper into the crowd, I caught sight of another familiar face, Max, my other childhood friend. He was leaning against a table near the makeshift bar, looking as out of place as I felt. His lanky frame and awkward posture were almost comforting in a strange way. He waved when he saw us, and we made our way over.
Bonnie!
he said, smiling.
I didn't think you'd actually come. Ellie thought you would start puking just from the thought of it just outside.
Yeah, well, here I am, I said, forcing a smile.
Drake's looking for you.
Max said, pointing toward the far end of the room.
He was asking around just a few minutes ago. I think he's over by the DJ booth now.
Thanks, I said. He was looking for me. That should have been a good thing, right? But now the pressure to find him felt even heavier. Ellie and Max exchanged a glance. Then Ellie nudged me gently. Go! We'll hang back here if you need us, okay? I nodded, swallowing hard as I turned toward the DJ booth. My heart was racing again, and my palms were clammy, but I forced myself to move forward. The crowd seemed to part and close around me like waves, and every step felt like an eternity. Already, my shirt was becoming drenched with sweat, and I hadn't even made a single dance move. Finally, I spotted him. Drake. He was standing near the TV booth, talking to someone I didn't recognize. His smile was easy and genuine, the kind of smile that could light up a room. When his eyes met mine, his face lit up even more, and he raised a hand to wave me over.
Bonnie!
He called, his voice cutting through the noise like it was just meant for me. I froze for a split second, the anxiety almost pulling me back, but then I took a deep breath, forced a smile, and made my way to him. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. And we did dance. I mostly kept myself on the furthest end of the dance floor, a section where few people were even near. Thankfully, Drake was understanding of my fear. My goodness, I loved him so much. I don't think I can even begin to define just how lucky I am to have someone like him. He's a churchgoer, works as a cashier at the local market, and doesn't steal from them. And he's always been good at school, though nothing exceptional. But none of that really matters to me. It's the way he treats me that makes all the difference. It's as if I've been handed the best hand in this card game called life, and I wasn't about to let it go for even a second. Unfortunately, life always seems to throw in a wild card, and this one was not something I believe any normal person could handle. After about an hour, I got separated from Drake again. I was with Jennifer. She had dragged me away from him, although he said he wanted to go with some friends upstairs. Apparently, there was a stairwell that they claim you could hear spooky sounds coming from. I wasn't about to do that, so I was glad to go with her. So, are you having fun? She teased. A little. Good. My boyfriend drank too much and is currently puking his guts out outside. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Who cares? He always tries to impress people. He keeps thinking he has an iron stomach. But I know well enough that guy can't even handle one bloody scene in a horror movie. As much as I love Jennifer as my best friend, she had a tendency to go on tangents about trivial, and dare I say, diva behavior. Honestly, I think she has main character syndrome. I feel like the side character in her life, but she keeps me around because she probably thinks it's character development. Tact caring towards someone like me. Deep down, I know she'd rather just go off and do the craziest things on the dance floor. But she wants to play the good friend. Not that I'm saying she's a bad friend. It's just that I know she wants to give in to her selfish side sometimes. And honestly, don't we all? I started looking through the torrent of people, but I couldn't spot Drake anymore. It had been well over 15 or 20 minutes, and it was strange that I couldn't see him anywhere. Is he still by that stairwell? Jennifer glanced around, shrugged her shoulders, and said, Maybe. How should I know? I pulled away from her, walking toward one of the hallways. I thought I saw him go down earlier with Ellie, Max, and some guy named Brant. Jennifer trailed behind me for a moment, but got pulled away by her second friend group. She's part of, 9, I believe. So I was left alone as I made my way near the stairwell. The stairwell didn't look like anything out of the ordinary, but when I heard something coming from further down the hallway, even with the loud music, I could hear it. It sounded like a distant scream. I thought about turning to someone nearby for help, but I got cold feet and decided to investigate on my own. Now, I know what you're thinking. If I'm such a scaredy cat, why would I be willing to go into a dark hallway by myself at a wild party? Well, 1, I was worried about my boyfriend, and 2, I really don't make the best decisions when I'm put on the spot. Walking down the hallway, I could feel an almost tangible tension in the air. It was like the atmosphere around me was constricting, pressing against my body, but something still dragged me forward. I needed to know what was going on. I just heard a girl scream. Did she need help? Was she being attacked? Was it some unruly guy grabbing her? Or maybe some girls picking on her? As I moved into another hallway, I noticed a faint light bulb illuminating this particular section. My mouth suddenly went dry. Thank God I hadn't drunk too much earlier. My foot slid across broken concrete on the floor, chips of it scattered everywhere. The place looked like one of those terrifying scenes you see in abandoned hospitals and horror movies. I couldn't believe how cliche this all felt, yet it was undeniably real. Then I heard something skittering behind me. I turned quickly, my heart racing now that I knew something, or someone, was there. But it was the same empty hallway I had just walked through. The skittering came again, this time from behind me. I spun around toward the direction I was heading, but I still saw nothing. Somewhere far away, I heard the sound of glass shattering, and then suddenly, a light turned on, leading up a flight of stairs. I moved closer to the first step, looking up nervously. Hello? There was no reply. I thought about turning back, but the skittering came again. I turned toward the main hallway, the one leading back to the party, and saw something dark move into a nearby room. I froze, terrified. I didn't want to go back that way. The skittering came again from the opposite end of the hallway. There were at least 2 or 3 people, or things, in the hallway with me. It was freaking me out. It couldn't be Drake. It couldn't be Ellie. They'd never try to scare me like that. The air was cold now, a draft coming from the stairwell. My stomach twisted, and I thought maybe I should just go up the stairs to get away from whatever was lurking here. Anything to avoid those creepy people, or things, down the hallway. I started climbing the stairs as quickly as I could, turning each corner of the stairwell. Nothing was following me, but I didn't stop. The higher I went, the darker it got. Finally, I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. Climbing up to what I believe was a third floor, I stopped abruptly, shocked by something that seemed to divide right through the stairwell. Above me was nothing but solid darkness, an impenetrable black mist that seemed to swallow my flashlight beam entirely. No matter how much I angled the light, it couldn't cut through. I thought about turning around, but then I heard that skittering sound coming up the stairs below me, growing louder and closer. With no other choice, I stepped forward and passed through the black mist. On the other side, I stopped and stared in disbelief. It was daytime. Sunlight poured down from above me, warm and bright, yet my waist was still submerged in the inky blackness below. I lowered my head through the mist, and what I saw left me speechless. Night. The same dark, cold stairwell I had just climbed. But when I lifted my head again, it was daylight. For a moment, I thought someone must have spiked one of my drinks. That was the only logical explanation for what I was seeing. But there was no time to dwell on it. The skittering sound was getting closer, pressing eerily through the stairwell. Panicked, I ran up the stairs, needing to get away from whatever was chasing me. At the top, I found myself in front of a window, where sunlight burned through the filthy glass panes. It should have been a comforting sight, but it wasn't. Grotesque, writhing vines coiled around the edges of the window. Their twisted, pulsing forms unlike anything I had ever seen. The air up here felt rancid, thick with a sour, burning smell that clawed at my nostrils. I moved up to the final fourth floor, my footsteps hesitant and shaky. The building was still the same crumbling, dilapidated structure, but the plant life was warped, mutated from something straight out of a nightmare. The walls and corners were overgrown with otherworldly vegetation that twisted with a malevolent, parasitic intent. My chest tightened with a rising sense of dread. But I forced myself to call out, "Is anyone here?" Nothing but utter silence answered me. I waited for a response, but none came. My voice should have echoed in the empty building, but instead, it felt swallowed up, devoured by whatever was lurking in this warped space. The grotesque vines around the window twitched slightly, though there was no breeze to move them. They pulsed faintly, almost alive, their surface glistening with some slick, dark substance. I took a hesitant step forward. The sour, acrid smell intensified, burning my nostrils and leaving a metallic taste on my tongue. "Drake?" I called out again, quieter this time. No answer. The light from the window didn't feel right. It was too harsh, too bright, yet cold at the same time. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the floor, bending in directions that made no sense, as though the sun above wasn't anchored to any single point. The vines along the edges of the glass quivered again, and I swore I heard a faint, wet sound, like something slithering inside them. I moved deeper into the floor, looking at each doorway, which either had a metallic door barely hanging on, or one completely missing. One door in particular caught my attention. It was slightly ajar, light spilling out from the crack. I didn't want to look. I told myself to keep walking, to ignore it, but my feet betrayed me, pulling me closer. As I approached, I realized the light wasn't warm or inviting. It was pale and sickly, flickering like it came from some dying source. I pushed the door open with trembling fingers, and what I saw made my stomach lurch. The room inside was covered in the same writhing vines, but they were thicker here. In the center of the room was a chair, and in that chair sat a figure. At first I thought it was Drake. My heart leapt, but as I stepped closer, I realized it wasn't him. The figure was slumped over, head hanging, its features obscured by a mess of black tendrils that wreathed and burrowed into what should have been a face. The body twitched occasionally, small, jerky movements that made my skin crawl. "Drake?" I whispered, though I was still under the impression that it wasn't him. The clothes were different. The figure's head jerked up sharply at the sound of my voice, and I stumbled back, nearly falling over. The tendrils parted just enough to reveal something underneath. Something pale and wet, with too many eyes staring directly at me. I turned and bolted out of the room, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst. I reached the stairwell and froze. The darkness I'd passed through earlier was gone. It was just an endless drop down to the next floors. My only exit back to where I had came from had abandoned me. Behind me, the skittering grew louder, closer. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to know what was following me. I ran down the stairwell, ignoring any thoughts of what might be waiting for me below. Once I was back on the first floor, I bolted down the hallway and emerged into the large, spacious area where the party had been held. But it was gone. The entire space was now an empty, desolate, broken chamber. There was no music, no people, no laughter. Just more of those terrible vines crawling along the walls and floor. Panicked, I sprinted for the exit. The moment I stepped outside, a blast of cold air hit me. There was no snow, but everything outside was red. The trees were sickly red. The grass was the same crimson hue. Even the air seemed tainted with a faint reddish glow. The sky, thankfully, was still blue. But something about it felt wrong. And then I saw it. A massive trunk. No, the trunk of some impossibly enormous tree stretched high into the sky. It was so colossal that it seemed to go on forever, reaching the very sun itself. And I mean that literally. The trunk traveled onward and pierced the sun, which hung dim and pale in the middle of the sky, like a cold, withering sphere. Remember when I said the lighting felt harsher earlier? Well, here's the thing. It was. The surfaces around me looked brighter, sharper, like the light was beating down on them with an unnatural intensity. Yet, when I looked up at the sun, it seemed no brighter than a full moon. It didn't hurt my eyes, and the light it gave off was weak, lifeless. Nothing about this made sense. The trees, the grass, the crimson-tinged plants. They weren't just red because of the season or a trick of the light. It was like their very chemistry had been altered. I ran into an open field, my breath visible in the freezing air. The cars that were parked along the road were unusable, their metal frames twisted and suffocated by thick, writhing tendrils. Strange flowers had sprouted from these tendrils, their petals shimmering with a sparkling, golden dust that spread into the air like smoke. I tried not to breathe too deeply as I crossed the field. When I glanced up again, I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. The massive tree trunk piercing the sun wasn't alone. There were others. I counted 6 or 7 similar trunks spouting from the sun, each stretching out in different directions. Some seemed to extend toward the planets in our solar system, as if reaching for them like monstrous parasitic arms. But one trunk stood out from the others. It was longer, infinitely longer, wrapping around the sun and spiraling outward into the void of space, its path disappearing into the stars. "What in God's name?" I whispered, frozen in place. My voice trembled, and my heart raced as I stared at the scene. What was I supposed to do? What was I even witnessing? The shimmering dust in the air began to suffocate me. Not physically, but mentally. The knowledge that it was floating all around me, that I might be inhaling whatever it carried, filled me with dread. Pulling my shirt over my mouth and nose, I accidentally tripped over a particularly thick vine and hit the ground hard. I desperately tried to cling to my shirt, to keep it over my mouth and nose, but as I got up, the ground started to move in certain spots. Rising out from the tendrils, more bodily figures started to jerk about, snapping all their heads in my direction. Seeing that I was in as precarious a situation as this, I turned around, and they started to chase after me. They weren't really fast, but more of them kept popping out of the ground, each one determined to wrap its emaciated arms around me and drag me down. I ran back toward the building, thinking that might offer some safety. I could feel my lungs burning, and my body was freezing up because of the chilly weather. I went back inside the building, feeling as if the entire place was starting to come alive. I couldn't understand what was going on, who these people, or whatever they were now, were, or what they wanted with me. Bring the untouched to us. Their voices called out in a shrill and loud chorus. I returned to the 4th floor again, wanting to get as far away from those things as possible. But still, I heard the skittering sound. I kept looking every which way, so terrified that I actually started to cry and accidentally peed myself. I was just so devastatingly scared of what was happening, and I really wanted to go back home. To my friends, to my boyfriend, to my mother and father. I just wanted to get out of my comfort zone, not get thrown into a sick and deadly nightmare. I found a secluded room where I huddled in the corner in the fetal position. I kept thrusting myself back and forth, shaking as I glanced nervously at every vent and hole in the wall. Those vines were everywhere, and there was no way to avoid them. But then I started to think for a moment. After about 10 or so minutes had passed, I needed to find my way out. I couldn't just sit here and hope someone was coming to rescue me. I needed to escape. But I wasn't able to convince myself that I'll be brave enough to go back out there and face whatever it was. So, like any person who suffers from mental illness, I pretended to be someone else in my own head. I thought of myself as Drake for a moment. What would he do? I had to think like a man. Getting back on my feet, I looked out the door and saw no one had followed me. This was the only reassuring hand I was dealt. As I looked around, I heard a staticky sound coming from a nearby radio. It was at the other end of the corridor, and when I came back to the last room, there was an old set-up station. There was a bed, a desk with a radio, and when I turned up the volume, I could hear a message being repeated on a loop. This is to all the survivors of North America. If you are hearing this, you may be one of the few survivors left. The infestation has spread to the entire planet and has taken hold of our entire solar system, spanning out from star to star. We do not know where this parasitic plant originates, but it consumes everything that generates heat and seizes any nearby planets. It grows at an astonishing speed, and is believed will take over the entire galaxy within the next 1900,000 years. There is no way to stop this mysterious plant, and we implore you to make sure your mouth is covered with a gas mask. Cherish these final days with your family and friends, if you have any left. There is no way to overcome this infestation. We have tried everything here at the World Health Organization Biological Research Facility, yet everything has failed. In our attempt to spread a biological agent that may kill the infestation. Until then, stay away from any of those who have become infected with the pollen of the flowers. You will come under its influence and die. The message started to repeat, and I wondered how this radio was still working, until I saw that it ran on a battery. I wondered how long ago the person who switched it on had left. Were they even still alive? But I didn't have much time to think about this, because I could hear the skittering again. I was getting a little annoyed by whatever it was that was trailing me, just out of sight. When I turned around, I thought it had already disappeared. So I was taken aback to discover that a creature was actually in front of me. It had several eyes on its head, was unusually tall, and its body was covered in blackened veins. The creature stared at me for a few seconds, and I was paralyzed in fear. I swallowed and looked around the room to see if there was anything I could use to defend myself. The creature came slowly toward me, and as I stood there, frozen, it lowered itself to eye level, grabbed its lower jaw, and pulled it down until its mouth was wide open. As it exhaled, a burst of hot air struck me in the face, and the stinging sensation caused me to close my eyes. I ended up wetting myself yet again, because this thing was just so terrifying to be in the presence of. When I opened my eyes, it stood tall and moved to the side, spreading a hand forward, as if allowing me to pass by. As I turned to leave the room, it spoke in a low, guttural, rumbling voice. We will use you for our breeding purposes. I can't tell you how freaked out I was when I heard that sound. I didn't know what they meant by breeding, but I was sure there was no consent in the matter. So my feet started pounding the concrete floor, harder than they ever had before. Down the hallway, I could hear an outbreak of shrill, disturbed screaming, bleeding throughout the entire facility. No, it was like the entire world was starting to scream. Maybe even beyond Earth itself, perhaps whatever this creature was. It was conscious of everything going on, everywhere it had spread. It was taking over every star in the galaxy, killing everything in its path, and now it wanted me. But just as I was about to throw myself out of a window, because honestly, I wasn't going to be used for such a terrible purpose, I saw that the stairwell had that black mist again. My heart leapt with joy as I quickly ran down those steps, leaving behind that world, until I slipped the moment my feet went through the black mist. When I opened my eyes, everything was dark. My head throbbed, and my body felt like it had been crushed under the weight of something massive. For a moment, I thought I was still in that nightmare world. The sound of skittering, lingering faintly in my ears like an echo. My chest tightened, panic creeping back in. Bonnie! Oh my God, you're awake! The sound of Jennifer's voice pulled me back. I blinked, disorientated, as I saw her face hovering above me. Behind her stood Ellie and Drake, their faces pale and worried. They were in the stairwell, the very same one I'd descended into the black mist. What? My voice was dry. My voice barely a whisper. You fell down the stairs, dummy, Jennifer exclaimed, her tone frantic, but unmistakably trying to mask her own fear. What were you doing up there? You've been gone for, 5 minutes, and then we found you just lying here. 5 minutes? No, that wasn't right. I stared at her, the confusion swirling in my head like a storm. No, I went up. There was a... Shh, don't try to talk, Ellie said softly, kneeling beside me. You hit your head when you fell. You're probably really disorientated. But I wasn't disorientated. I knew what I'd seen, what I'd lived. There wasn't just some bad fall down the stairs. I had been in another world, with impossible creatures and writhing, grotesque vines. My body still felt that terror, the cold draft of the stairwell, and the sting of that creature's breath. Drake knelt down to me, brushing some of the hair away from my face. His touch was warm, grounding me in a way that nothing else could in that moment.
You scared us half to death,
he said softly.
Are you okay? Can you move?
I nodded slowly, though my limbs felt heavy and sluggish. I think so. Good, Jennifer said, her tone shifting back to her usual annoyed self. Now she'd seen I wasn't dying. Because you've officially ruined this party for me, we're getting out of here. Despite her words, she helped me to my feet, with Ellie and Drake supporting me on either side. My head was spinning, my mind reeling as I tried to process what had just happened. Had I imagined it? Had the fall caused me to dream up that horrifying world? I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that.
Bonnie, seriously, what were you doing up there?
Drake asked as we made our way out of the building. I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. I don't know. I think I just got lost. He gave me a puzzled look, but didn't press further. Jennifer rolled her eyes. See, this is why I tell you to stay out of creepy places like that. You have no sense of balance or spatial awareness. She never once said that to me today, but I let her words wash over me, too distracted by the lingering feeling of unease settling in my chest. Regardless, I was relieved to feel that warm night air. When I got home, everything felt wrong. I wanted to believe that being back in my room, wrapped up in the familiar comfort of my bed, would make me feel safe again. But no matter how many blankets I pulled over myself, I couldn't shake the chill that clung to my body. I glanced at my phone, its light illuminating the dark room as I scrolled aimlessly, trying to distract myself. My friends had all texted me, checking in to make sure I was okay, but I didn't have the energy to respond. Even Drake's messages went unanswered. My body felt heavy, my chest tight. Every breath I took felt labored, like something was sitting on my lungs. And then I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, the faint glow of my phone playing tricks on my eyes. But as I pulled back the sleeve of my shirt and held my arm closer to the light, my stomach dropped. Thin, faint red lines were spreading beneath my skin, branching out like tiny cracks in glass. As I stared, horrified, I swore I could feel something moving inside me. "No," I whispered, my voice trembling. "No, no, no." I scrambled out of bed, running to the bathroom and flipping on the light. The veins were spreading, stretching up my arms and toward my chest. My breathing quickened, panic setting in as I lifted my shirt to inspect my torso. The veins were there too, faint but undeniable, creeping like roots toward my heart. I gripped the edge of the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My skin looked pale, sickly, and my eyes didn't look right either. My eyes had red, tiny capillaries visible where they shouldn't have been. My mind raced, replaying the events of the night. That creature, the one with the blackened veins and too many eyes. Its breath, I had felt it on my face, hot and stinging. "Oh God," I whispered, my voice cracking. "It's inside me." I staggered back from the mirror, clutching my chest as a wave of nausea hit me. My mind was screaming at me to do something, to call someone, to get help, but who could I even turn to? No one would believe me. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face as the reality of my situation set in. It was growing inside me. I'm finishing off this message to let you know I won't be seeing tomorrow. After seeing what it did to that other world, I'm gonna try and do something drastic. Mum, Dad, Drake, everyone, I love you all so much. I'm going to take that canister of gasoline and go out into the woods and set myself on fire. Anything to stop it from getting out, if that world couldn't contain it. Then I'm going to do the one thing that may be able to prevent it from happening here. I am dead in any case, but I just know this is going to hurt a lot. I'm posting this so you will at least have a solid understanding of why I had to do it in the event you come across a news story about a teenage girl who set herself on fire in the woods. Sorry to all of you. I did not intend to endanger anyone's life. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Goodbye. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.